And we are live. So, welcome to Heart with Saima. How is everyone doing? We come to you with Ashok, Nancy, and myself first Tuesday of every month. And Nancy is not here right now, but we are hoping that she's going to join us soon. Um, we bring to Heart, and we talk about heart subjects. And in fact, before we started, Ashok and myself, we were talking about such issues. But before we dive into that, welcome, Ashok, and I will let you give your introduction.
Well, my name is Ashok Bhattacharya. I'm the founder of the Empathy Clinic here in Canada. I've been a psychiatrist for many, many years, and I'm really interested in reaching out to people like Saima, who are really helping the community understand issues of the heart, issues of empathy, and issues of understanding, so that we can show up for each other, support each other, and feel much more comfortable with some of the difficult issues that we're going through in our lives. Thank you, Saima.
Absolutely. So before we started, went live, we were talking about. I was sharing with you, Ashok, that after going through my divorce last year, the people. One thing, and because you have your empathy clinic, Ashok, and you do couples counseling,
Mm,
you might be able to shed some more light on this. That the people, most of the people that I used to hang out with, my friends for life, my friends for 30 years, I felt that these people could not understand, could not really resonate with my journey of going through my divorce. And so they were constantly struggling with me for me to see their perspective. They look at me from their own vision, and they want me to conform to what their vision is of who I whether I should have, whether this is something that should have happened in my life or not, and if this is something that's happened in my life, then how my journey from that point, uh, or even right now, what my journey should be like in this moment going forward. A friend of mine, Ashok, she even said to me that you are supposed to, you can't just be who you are, because if you just want to be who you are, then you are going to be ostracized from the community. And if you want to live in the community, then you can't just, like, at your free will, just do what it is that you think is best for you. And I have such a problem with that. And then it's like, I know they love me, but if they love me, I feel they, instead of being consumed by their own fear of what they feel that my choices, the impact of my choices, or the impact of the consequences of my choices is going to be, they are just so consumed in that fear that they just can't seem to accept me for who I'm evolving into.
So I just got back from Italy, Saima. And the reason why I went there is to walk my daughter down the aisle. She got married there.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. She married an Italian man. She lives in a beautiful place in northern Italy. And as I was walking down the aisle, I was fighting back my own tears because this is my beloved daughter who we're very close. I was thinking, she's moving into a different space in her life. Now, unfortunately, and I hope this isn't upsetting to your audience, but the history of marriage has come a long way, but it did start off with women being men's property,
Yeah.
and that women were given away by the fathers almost like a part of the father's property, which is an egregious, shocking thing to have to say, that now that we're in a stage where that's completely changed. But what does that mean as I'm walking down the aisle in a small community where everyone in the community knows that this young woman's getting married and that she's from Canada and that she's marrying an Italian person. Well, the whole community gets involved in the wedding.
Yeah.
There are literally people standing outside the church with cameras hoping to get a photograph. But what does that mean for this conversation today? And I think this is the difficult part, is that people get invested in the institution of marriage as a community event. And so when someone is saying, my marriage isn't working for me for whatever reason, or the marriage is no longer satisfactory to either partner, the community gets involved in the idea of marriage as what holds us all together. And there is some value in that. But if a marriage is not working and people should not be in that marriage anymore, it makes it very difficult for them to explain to people who have that ideal of what marriage is from a community perspective. And what you're describing, um, I think at least, is that a lot of the people who had supported you as an amazing friend over many, many years were reacting to their sense of loss. That their good friend Simon's now is moving through a change in her marital status, as opposed to supporting you in your experience, what you're going through, and showing up for you as a friend.
And that's it's very frustrating for me, because I feel like every time now I love them, they love me, the love is there, but every time I'm with them, I just feel that my energy gets depleted, because instead of being in a space where I can be myself and express my thoughts and opinions, I'm constantly being subjected to an environment of judgment, where I have to continuously prove my new thoughts, where I have to, because I'm continuously growing and I'm changing, and I read a lot, and I listen to YouTube webinars, and I do all this stuff because I have a podcast here. I learn from people like yourself, Ashok, and I've been learning for the past 2 years, 2.5 years. Amazing people come on, I learn and I think about it, and I'm like, okay, does this serve me? Will it help me? And I self-reflect. Can this thought help me become a better person? And I do all that self-reflection. But it's so depleting. It depletes your energy when you have to explain to everyone, and you have to, you feel like you're being put in a pedestal to prove the worthiness of your own thoughts.
Well, let me say something that might be a bit shocking, is that the same thing happens when someone gets cancer. A lot of people simply don't know how to relate to that person, and they might not even want to talk to them. So suddenly, this person who's got a dreadful illness, their friends aren't showing up for them because they've got this disease and no one knows what to say. And I think to a certain degree, people treat divorce like a kind of a cancer situation. It's a threat to everybody involved. I know absolutely for sure for women who are getting divorced, a lot of their female friends are afraid that their divorced friend is gonna start chasing their husband, and you have
Yes.
this strange situation where suddenly a friend is saying, "Well, I don't really want to see you, or you can't come over, or you have to bring a guy with you, so that you're not causing trouble in my marriage." And I don't think many women do that, but some do.
Yeah.
And that's a sudden threat
Yeah.
that now that Saima is on the streets again, and she's prowling and hunting. Not none of that's true, of course, but I'm saying that this is this idea that sometimes now there's a whole upset in the social economics of you being in a relationship and then not being in it. And this is why people can actually quite paranoid when they're talking to their friends who are going through a divorce.
So I mean, for people who are listening, I will let everyone know that there are, according to statistics, there are around 2,000 eligible, available men in the Dallas Fort Worth area. so
Okay,
So if there are 2,000 men available, there is no reason for anyone to go after anyone's husband, because there
right?
are enough eligible single men. And not just that, I think the other thing that a lot of people have a problem is not the right word, but I think I'm not that typical person who's just sitting there crying all the time and withdrawn and just enclosed in a closed environment
Right.
away from everyone. I'm I'm vocal about things, and I'm a vocal about my experience, and I'm uh, have been working on myself, and I'm happy about the place where I'm in. I'm a person. I'm an optimist. I see the glass as half full, and I see this as a chance to make different choices, and it's a second chance I feel at life. So that's my perspective on it.
But like I said, and I'm not describing you necessarily, but some women are frightened by somebody's confidence, and you are a powerful, intelligent, confident person. And some people feel scared by that. They're expecting you to be curled up in a ball, crying in the corner of your room, so depressed that you can't function. And when they see that you're actually functioning and engaged
Sad for
and
them, or whatever. I mean, a friend. So we were at this dinner recently for my birthday, and we were talking about, my sister-in-laws were there too. So we were talking about how my I mean, I was telling them that, hey, you know what, in my whole entire life, I only remember my mother slapping me once in my life. I mean,
mm,
I do not ever remember her. It was, and uh, I was my father's daughter, so my mother just could not, even if she wanted to slap me. I'm sure she did quite a few times, but she couldn't, because she was just, she was concerned about my dad not wanting. And I was with my parents yesterday evening, so I was sharing this with my father, that I don't remember my dad ever saying anything to me. And my mom's, that one slap that I remember, and my dad was like, yes, because we cherished you, and we loved you, and the, this is how we raised you, because this is how important you were to us. And I'm like, and here my my friends are questioning that. My friends feel that, what, it's good for parents to be abusive parents, because that's when you turn out to be perhaps better individuals when you get trashed up.
no, I think so. So I guess what you're describing, though, I think, is that there are expectations of human behavior that we all have to be governed by. And when someone is going through something that might be that is difficult, there's no question that divorce is difficult for everybody involved. There are expectations on behavior, and I'm sure that you're behaving very well and very naturally with what's going on. But what we're really talking about is people don't really understand what you're going through. They may think they understand and they might try to understand, but they may not really understand. And the best thing to do really is to ask someone, how are you coping? What are you going through? How are you experiencing this? How can we help you with your process? Instead of saying, well, you should be acting like this and doing that, or throwing all kinds of suggestions at you and making you just kind of upset or depleted and tired because you're constantly having to appease them instead of look after yourself.
And they don't understand that, yes, the outlook is there for sure, where I'm like, okay, it's a second chance at life, and it's a second chance to make different choices, and it's a second chance to perhaps do things that you didn't do before, and maybe some unconventional stuff that perhaps people in my culture might not be that used to.
Right.
And you know like being out there, like meeting people,
Mm.
um, being receptive to it. And but what people don't understand, that although this courage is there, although this strength is there, but It's been a journey. It's been a journey. You just don't come to a point where one day you wake up and you're like, okay, you know what? Um, okay, the marriage is over. It takes a lot. The children are impacted, your livelihood is impacted. There is so much that is happening behind closed doors. Not everyone wants to, um, just put everything out there. And as vocal as I am, and as much as I do put out there, and this is also for the numerous single women who are out there,
Right.
who are those women who are hiding, who don't have the courage, who feel that their life is just devastated and destroyed, and they're having a difficult time putting themselves together. But this is also for those women who have the ability to end their marriage, but because of the cultural and society expectations, they don't end it, and they keep suffering. They're in abusive relationships. They think that the children are too young. But I just keep listening that the cells are such magnificent. They adapt to whatever is going on. They absorb things which are happening in the surrounding. In fact, I was reading this these statistics, not statistics, this research, which says that cells carry trauma through generations. And I was like, whoa! I mean, that's so crazy. So you absorb and you carry so much which is happening around you, that this is so devastating for children. When children are constantly in an environment where they see their parents suffering, where they see no happiness, where they see abusive, just physical, mental, emotional abuse. So all this just impacts these women, and they don't have the courage to. They will private message me, but they don't have the courage to end their marriage. And I feel that this life is a gift. If you have spent so many years in a certain situation, you have a right to get yourself out of it, just to be able to breathe, just to be able to smell the flowers, just to be able to see the sunset with a different vision, just to be able to, just be in the moment and to just rejoice and feel that moment of peace and happiness.
So when does that happen, Sammy? Because I think when people get married, let's say if we follow a couple and we're seeing them in the first months of their marriage, first few years of their marriage, and maybe they have kids or not, then they start, their careers are taking off. When does a marriage become suffocating to somebody? Because I think that what's interesting is that when people get married, the oxygen mask isn't coming down because they're not suffocating yet. But somewhere along the way, that mask comes down. And I know you're supposed to put it on yourself first before you put it on other people. But from your experience, what do you think causes, especially women, to feel that suffocation?
I think lack of communication, life happening. For myself, we took some financial hits. And
Mm,
during that process, along that journey, we stopped communicating with each other.
I see.
We stopped having the daily communication, sharing what we were feeling, or how the different things in our life were impacting us. And then, being around family and kids being born, and just, you know, I think somewhere, I think at that somewhere at along those lines, I mean, you lost communication and you
But,
stopped.
but we have a comment, maybe disrespected, which I think is a great way to put it. Why do people stop talking? I mean, I have, my wife and I have a 10 to 20 minute every single day, a chat just to align ourselves. I finish work and we have our little cup of tea coffee and we have our chat. It's not always super relevant about super relevant things, but it's an alignment chat so we can get back together on with that. And sometimes we're using that time to sort out a difference of opinion, but most times it's to align ourselves that because people do kind of fall out of alignment with each other. Why do you think that happens though? Why do people fall out of alignment and stop communicating?
Um, is it because you fear that if you say what you want to say, the other person might not be able to take it, or the other person might misconceive it? Maybe, I'm not sure.
It's a great answer, but I think to add to what you're saying, I think, and this is maybe a bit shocking to say, but human beings are not really designed for marriage, 50, 60, 70 years of marriage. We're probably designed for a couple of decades tops. And I think what's happens is that especially in North America, marriage takes continuous work from the day it starts. People buy a car and a little light goes on, you bring it into the shop to get it fixed. I bet you lots of marriages have lights flashing all over the place and they're not getting an oil change and get the tires pumped up. So communication is key. I think that's such a correct thing. But I think why do people stop talking? I think that's very right. Maybe they start having ideas about their marriage isn't quite what they thought it was. There's always an ideal thing, and then that idea gets a little bit crushed because of reality. Financial changes, job changes, raising kids, illness, stress, these things happen. But maybe if people had that regular conversation with each other and made sure that they had their little checkup, that communication might be easier to have, certainly, especially if there's difficult things in a relationship. I know that in my marriage, my wife and I have been together for 36 years now, and we've had lots of struggles and strains. It's not smooth, it's not easy. And I tell everyone, marriage is tough, it's difficult. Even if you're super in love with your partner and you're very committed to each other and you're loyal to each other and you love each other very much, it still takes a lot of work. There's no self-maintaining marriage. And I will tell anyone who's planning to marry somebody is that you have to marry that person every day, because that person is different today, that they'll be different next year, and definitely in 5 or 10 years. And if you don't marry them every day, one day you wake up and say, oh my gosh, like I don't even know who this person is and I can't talk to them anymore. And that you've got this terrible rift that happens with communication. And that's why I think those alignment conversations can work. And quite sadly, and as you implied earlier on, some marriages are not meant to be. They're not good marriages for both parties, and they really should make arrangements to get out of it and find a healthier relationship to be in for
And
sure.
Ashok, I think because we in our culture we don't have the concept of living relationships. So you meet someone, and you're like, okay, or they're arranged marriages, and you get into a marriage, and it doesn't really you don't really get to know each other uh, ahead of time. You get to know each other after you're already married, and then you feel that, you know what, you've signed the dotted line, so you can't go back on it, and you keep trying to adjust and readjust, and perhaps you're just maybe you're just too different.
But I think it's such a great point, and Amin is saying here in the message that talking is two-way, and if one is not heard properly or the point is of view is snubbed, then communication dies a slow death. And Amin is exactly correct, because I think listening and talking are separate skills, and we have to heed and listen and take in what our partner is saying. But I would defy anyone to know who they're going to be in 2 or 5 or 10 years. Because we evolve, we're evolving. And back when people get married at 18 to 20, there's no way they're going to know what they're going to like by the time they're 50s. And nowadays, people are getting
Changed a
married.
lot.
Exactly. And so if you keep if you keep abreast of each other and the changes that are happening, you can align yourselves a little bit better. And you don't have to align yourselves on everything. You just have to align your things on most things so that there's enough commonality and fluidity so that you can grow as individuals, but not grow apart, right? Isn't that the common thing people say? We just kind of grew apart. Well, why do you think you grew apart? Because you weren't trying to stay coordinated together. And anything that needs to move in a straight line needs to be watched because things tend to veer off course anyway, whether
Yeah.
you're in an airplane or a boat. And marriage is the same way. We do tend to veer off course if you don't look after it, and if you don't look after things, they do tend to get chaotic. And this is why I think marriage is no different. It's a human invention. It's a beautiful invention. It's good for society that we have marriages, but at the same time, it needs to be maintained. And if someone's not in a good marriage, they absolutely have to make sure they can look after themselves as well.
Yeah, I mean, I had met my husband, my ex-husband, at the university when I was attending. So many people are like, but why did you divorce? I mean, you met your husband and it was a love marriage, and you didn't even go into an arranged marriage. And I'm like, but you do understand how young I was, and uh, and we were together for 27 years, and
Hmm.
that's a long time,
Yeah,
and that's a long time to, and it's okay for, um, for us to, um, you know we will always be there. So we are not one of those couples who, um, we'll be there, a part of each other's life. Our families are connected, we are all
of
connected,
course. Yes.
but the dynamics have changed, and it's okay to have expectations from life. It's okay to want to feel alive again, somewhere along the journey where you kind of became, the distance just became so wide that you're still each other's well-wisher, but you want to look at life from a different perspective. And people don't understand that thought. The people are like, our life is over, you know. We'll die one day soon. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, how about just putting some life into yourself and feeling alive again, and just wanting to live life in whatever capacity that might or might not be.
But you're raising another point, though, and I think that I want to make this very, very clear. Especially being female, I think the hopefulness and the possibilities of being a woman in this time and age is I mean, it's not perfect, but it is better than it used to be. And I think women are seeing that they have opportunity and that they have power, and they can choose what's good for them. They no longer have to be a prisoner. They no longer have to be a held hostage. And I know that that is true for some women still today. But I think it's certainly in developed countries, this is beginning to change. I mean, India has a less than a 3% divorce rate. And that's not because they have great marriages, it's because they don't have a culture that allows marriages to dissolve and etc. So, I mean, the numbers may be low, but what's our happiness numbers? Are people in satisfactory marriages or not? And so I think we have to watch when we look at, oh, this place has a very low divorce rate. Well, okay, but it's not a culture that allows women those kinds of freedoms.
I mean, in fact, in India, we're coming from where we used to see sati, where the
Yes.
wife had no choice but to be burned alive, when the husband died. And it's just maybe 20, 25 years, 30 years ago that it was completely throughout India that it
Yeah.
was,
Horrific. Just horrific.
so, I mean, that's no way of living your life, right? Not
Absolutely
just for
not.
women, for men too.
And so, that's a
You are-
cultural norm that makes the point that I think women have, thank gosh, come a long way to be able to have the freedom to, as you say, to actually embrace their life and want to live it and live it well. not just with shackles, but live their life well. Women have been in chains for far too long.
Absolutely, and I think that is one of the main things for me, to put my vulnerabilities out there, to put myself out there, and to talk about my journey. I just choose not to go in deep dive into the reasons behind the divorce because
Right.
it's no one's business
It's
and nobody
private.
needs to go into it, right? And it doesn't even matter. Do you think it matters the reasons for a divorce,
I
Ashok?
think what matters for me, because I work with a lot of divorced people, I work in a town that has a close to 60% divorce rate. And it's a wealthy, affluent town, and so people are often get tired of their relationships. And what matters is how people show up for themselves. That's what I encourage. So I have a fair number of female clients who are post divorce, trying to put their life together. And I want them to help them show up for themselves so they can find their confidence, remember their self esteem, remember their power, their intelligence, their vitality, their love, their zest for life, and help them find that again. And quite frankly, most do. Sometimes it takes a bit of time, but most do.
Why do you think? Why do you think that is something that even has to be um, put out there? I'll tell you, it's just some crazy stuff that I come across. I have women who will listen to my podcast, but they will listen to the podcast from an alias account because they don't want their family and friends to know that they are listening to the podcast. It just makes you think how what kind of environment are these women living in where where they're so afraid to to put themselves even in a situation where they feel that their choices are going to be judged because they're listening to something which is coming from a liberal open-minded stance.
Well, I think there's a long history of that. We used to tell people the world was flat. And the reason to tell people the world is flat is they won't go to the edge of it and discover there's another tribe on the other side of it, so that they'll stay in their tribe and not learn that there's alternatives on the other side. So if you frighten people into believing that your way is the only way, they will have difficulty being curious. But when you provide an opportunity with your amazing show, and you providing information and thoughts and heartfelt feelings, of course you're gonna find that audience. But some of them are still in that previous place where they're frightened, and they're kind of peeking and hoping to get a little bit of information, but they're still frightened because they haven't made that move from being an imprisoned person to a free person. And we've seen this in history many times when people have tried to become free from the shackles, and especially in pre-feminist culture, where women were becoming professionals, doctors and lawyers and accountants and salespeople, and people said that you can't do that, you're a woman. I say, what? Yeah, you just can't. Well, look at women now, running countries, and uh, most of the doctors in Canada are female now. So it's really changing, but it's still not changing enough because we're still seeing these pockets, as you're describing, of women who are still inside that prison, hoping to escape somehow. You're providing hope for them, which is beautiful, but they need more than just hope. They need action.
But that action can only come from them, right? I
Yes, exactly right. You just took my next sentence from me. That
Yeah.
action has to come from them. But that's why you are such a powerful role model, when you're able to just demonstrate to people that you can be through a difficult situation and you can show up. You can be strong, you can be vital, you can have a bright eyes and say, look, you can move through, and life can still happen for you. You don't have to shrink away and be that person. You can have your life isn't over yet. My parents got divorced, as you probably know, um, 27 years into their marriage, ironically. And I thought, "Oh, what's going on here?" I was 20 at the time, and they both died within 10 years. And it's not because they died for love from each other. I just think they found it stressful. I think they found the marriage stressful. They probably found me stressful to raise, and I think it was just very hard on them. And it was sad. They both remarried, but I think they found it very hard. They had some difficult challenges in life as well, but I'll never forget, thinking, well, if I get a chance to get married and I can find somebody, not only do I have to find the person who can put up with me, which is can be difficult, but someone who can grow with me. And if I get in the way of that person's growth, then I have to move out of the way. And if they get, so we have to be mindful of each other and grow parallel, but not grow apart, but certainly not grow on top of each other. And I think this is tough. It's hard. And as we were saying at the beginning of the meeting, if you don't have that conversation regularly, to align where you are with each other and find respect for each other and the love for each other, then that way, when if you're working on that, your marriage might have a chance of working. But once again, not every marriage works or is meant to work. And we have to, that's when we have to be true to ourselves, who we need to be for ourselves. And a lot of people do wake up and say, I just don't feel like me anymore. And I think my marriage is just stifling me. And and I think that the work that you're doing is so powerful. I'm so happy to help you with it, because you're giving people hope that if it's too difficult and your life is becoming too stifling to you, always another, there's a way out and there's a way up to show up for yourself.
Absolutely. And I think, um, at the end of the day, your courage has to come from within you, and and it has to, and
Well,
it
just imagine you at 6 years of age, right? uh, Fiercely intelligent, beautiful little girl, full of confidence, and knowing exactly what to do with her life, right? And I think it's interesting that when you look at videos of especially young girls, they're so confident and happy, and you ask them, "Are you pretty?" They're all pretty. "Are you happy?" "Yes, I'm so happy." And then just 6 years later, when they're 12 and 13, you can see that begin to shrink away, the doubt and this, and then they get married, and then they're hoping to put all those investments in their relationship. And what we really need to get back to is that sense of self. How can we preserve that, so that especially women, they're getting to relationships that are serving them as well as serving the marriage itself.
I think it has to do with, I think everything in life has to stems from self-love,
Mm,
love for yourself.
exactly. I can't stress that enough. And I think we're not talking about a kind of love that is narcissistic. We're talking about a kind of love that is about a solid appreciation of your value, and that value grows with time as well. And if you have that same appreciation for your partner, and they have that appreciation for you, then I think that's a strong relationship right there. But your relationship with yourself is going to have a lot to do with your relationship with the people in your life going forward.
Absolutely, because if you love you and you accept you and each and every inch of you and everything about you, the good, bad, and the ugly,
Hmm.
then you you work from a place of fulfillment because you are content within, and then you want to nurture and you want to give from the overflow.
I think that's very true, Saima. But I also think, and this is not to be disagreeable with you tonight, but I think that we live in a culture in North America where we're actually trained not to be content. We're trained to want as much as we can possibly have. We're trained to think capitalistically. We're trained to think, I want a nicer car, a bigger house, more expensive things, a nicer watch, etc. And that's good. I'm a fan of capitalism. I like to do well and have nice things and buy my wife some nice something every now and then and go on a fancy trip. But it does poison the idea of contentment, because contentment is gratitude with what you have. right? If you think about that, if you have gratitude, if you don't have much but you have contentment, you're grateful for what you have. And we live in this culture again. I love Canada, and I know you probably love the States and where you live, but it is a culture that promulgates the idea of more is better, and more is better sometimes. This is not better all the time. And I think it affects our social cultural beings, and it certainly affects our relationship with ourselves, because that means, are you happy with yourself? Well, I'd be happy with myself if I made an extra, if I added a zero to my income. I'm happy with myself if I had a Lexus instead of a Toyota. I'll be happy with myself if. And it breeds this discontentment that I think trickles down into our relationships with each other. And
Because we don't want to accept people who are content.
that's what I'm trying to say. I go to places. I was in Chile a number of years ago, and we were walking around, my wife and I, and we were in a town that's quite poor, and everyone seemed to be smiling and happy. Everyone was walking around holding hands. He said they should be miserable. They don't have BMWs. They don't have big houses. They don't have fancy jewelry. Why are they so happy? And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm poisoned by my own culture. That contentment really happens here in your heart with self, and then in the relationships that you have that are meaningful to each other. You with me?
Yes. Yeah, I understand. And it's a double-edged sword, you
It's a
know.
double-edged sword. I have three kids; they're all doing well, and well, you have to do well, right? And why can't I just be content with who they are and what they're doing? And I think it's because I have Asian values, and I want my kids to do well and succeed in their lives. But at the same time, I think content is, we talk about it, but our culture doesn't necessarily encourage it the way I think we should.
And that's a tough one because if someone is content in their minimalistic state and that's who they are, um, acceptance is very difficult. You
Well,
know,
I mean, if you look at it, certain cultures like Eskimos and nomadic cultures, they're quite happy. They also have very low incidences of mental illness because they don't have much, right? And the community tends to stay together. If someone's not doing well, the whole community rallies around and helps them. Now, they have no privacy and everyone knows their business. So I think that's the downside of that. But there are ways of living that contentment is really the goal. And and I think that we sometimes stray away from that a little bit, and lose, that's when we lose touch with ourselves, right? Like, how can I be happy with me if I don't have a Rolex watch, or a BMW or something? And I'm not against those things. I think they're all lovely things. I don't have a Rolex, that's okay. But I think to me, I'm going to say this to you very, very honestly, the quality of life is how you show up for people. It's how you love and who you love and who loves you. That is the gold of life, the quality of your best relationships. And if you're going through a tough time emotionally, especially if you're going through divorce, that sure makes you question that stuff and say, what the heck? Like this is really important. I need that support from people. I want that. I want to give that support, and I want to feel that from people close to me.
but so but like where we started this whole show, right? With friends, with people who have been in your life the longest, and your friends standing there and they're questioning your choices because they are so consumed with fear for you, that instead of them being there for you because you need it, you have to stabilize yourself and everything that you've gone through. Turn around and open your arms and just pull them in and try to hug them and try to cajole and try to patch things because they still are not capable of doing that, extending that unconditional love to you because they're so consumed in their fear.
And that's right. I think we do live in a somewhat paranoid, frightened culture where people, even though we have more people living together in large cities, we have less people that we actually know. And if you live in a tiny village, you know everybody. You know everybody. If you live in a huge city, you may not even know your neighbors, because we've got this reverse effect of the more people you put in a place, the more likely you have anonymity, which is people really not knowing each other at all, especially if you have mixed cultures in there. So I love mixed culture cities. I think they're great. You have great food and great entertainment and that kind of thing. But you do have that sense of nobody not really knowing anybody. And like I said, I went to see my daughter get married, and it was a small wedding, small church. Everybody knew everybody because that's the beauty of these small places. And I go to a wedding here in Canada, nobody knows anybody at the wedding.
And there are
And,
700-800 people.
but that's what we're missing. We're missing that base connection of can I trust you if I need you? If I need you, can I trust you? And it's a tough question to ask, especially
Yes.
for someone that you don't know that well. We don't ask that because we get frightened of rejection, and so we just don't ask. We don't show up for each other.
But people don't, but it's not unconditional love, Ashok.
No, unconditional love is tough to find. It's usually some conditions apply. Read the small print. Batteries not included.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes, I had a friend who got cancer recently, and I turned up to the hospital to visit him. I said, have you had many visitors? He says, no, you're the first person. I was like, what's going on here? Like, why aren't people showing up for this guy? He's a beautiful person,
Yeah.
very kind, loving, and I guess people get scared. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. And I think we talked about this about when someone's going through divorce. People sometimes just don't know what to do, so they don't show up, and that person gets isolated and alienated. And I think this is something that we need to open the conversation to that because we need to have those difficult conversations with people.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we are trying to do here, right? Open the
Absolutely.
and have those
That's
for
that's why I'm
every
so keen on helping you with this because I think you're making it happen. You're making the difficult conversations happening. You're making a difficult conversation more normal to have. I think that's a beautiful human thing to do for people. It's wonderful.
because literally, I mean, I'm speaking from my where I stood and where I needed that unconditional support,
Mm.
but it wasn't there because there was constantly judgment coming in.
Yep,
Maybe they weren't even realizing that their judgment was, they expected me to be a product of their expectations or
that's
what
right.
they believe is right, versus what I feel is right for me. And Ashok, I'm going to tell you that, you know, I spend my time mostly with me or my daughters in my house, just my work or going to my gym and in my, that small, tiny space, um, I am able to listen to myself.
Mm.
I'm able to spend quiet time with myself. I'm able to spend time with myself in silence. And my intuition is strong. It's there's no clutter over there. And when I'm with friends who are constantly, I'm feeling judged, right? Then I feel like I need to go and maybe listen to some more of Louis Ray so I can kind of regain my balance. And I am the one who ends up then putting that unconditional love out there. And as I'm doing that, different people are entering my life, just new people, and that's what they are giving me. But
I think that's a
yeah,
key
people
message. I think sometimes when you put the right energy out there, the right people come to you. And it's always a surprise to me who shows up, especially when sometimes you're going through a tough time and you're imagining someone, maybe your best friend, is going to show up for you, and they don't. And it's someone that you didn't quite think was, and they show that there they are. What can I do to help? I'm here for you. Let's go. And you think, oh my gosh, this person was in the wings, but now they've come front and center, and this person's demonstrating what humanity really is all about, which is essentially helping each other.
and
We're
that's just so amazing. I'll tell you that I'm just so consumed with gratitude. I'm so privileged to be in the place where I am. I'm so grateful to be in this place where I am. countless challenges around me that I'm still slowly, I tell people that I'm in my boat, and, um, I see the shore, and my daughters are in my boat with me, and we are steering ourselves towards, safety. But there's so many leaks in the boat that keep opening up, and we keep putting them out, and we just rowing slowly. Um, but I'm so grateful to be in the place where I am. Um, there's just so much gratitude to.
And I think gratitude is such a grounding emotion for us. And I think whether we're losing or winning or staying the same, just don't ever forget the power of gratitude in finding a stable place inside yourself. It definitely works on your self love, but it also helps you put out a positive energy to people around you. People are attracted to people who are grateful for just being. And I think that it's a powerful statement to just be grateful for being. And unfortunately, I lost a good friend last year to cancer. I'd known him for 53 years. It was my really probably my best friend of my life. But instead of, I mean, I'm sad, but I'm grateful for what we did have. I'm grateful for the memories. He's right here in my heart. I'm grateful for the experience, for the love that we shared for each other, and I'm grateful that I'm not grateful that he's passed on, but I'm grateful that for the quality of life that he did had. He gave a lot of love to people, and I was one of those people that shared that. So I know it's kind of a dig sometimes to find that what you can be grateful in a tragic situation or a situation has been lost, but that's the power of the human condition. We can find hope, we can find gratitude, and that can help us find love.
Absolutely. And
I got to hop soon, so
I'm going to let you hop off, and I will just end the show. And Ashok, thank you as always for being here. I will see you next month, and you take care.
I'm very grateful for you, Saima. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. So, friends, thank you all for being here as always. Um, heart to heart with Saima. It's all about sharing stories from the heart. It's about being authentic. It's about showing courage and showing strength. It's about, you know, let's touch lives together. So, with that, until next time, take care and stay safe. All right. So I'm going to end the show. Thank you.